Welcome. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Boulder. I stood here about 3 or 4 weeks ago saying it was a beautiful day, and it is today, and it was almost springtime, I said to you. I ain't going to try that again. Anyway, welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Boulder. I'll talk slowly while our minister comes up. I'll never get to do this again. Did I say that? Welcome? Yes, I did. My name's Ray Knutson. And one of the things I love about this church, and this may come as a surprise to you, is the number of kids we have. Now, I know that wasn't probably what you were expecting, but for me, it's true. It's such a pleasure to see so many of them enjoying the Sunday classes, the coffee hour mingling, and sometimes even the service. I know there are times when the parents would like to have a break, but hey, for old grandfather types like me, it's wonderful. I love it. It's also wonderful to see how they're so welcomed and included by all of you. During last Sunday's service, I watched a young child just wandering around in the back, looking at all the big people, and getting so many smiles back in return. No fear, just completely at home. And I'm convinced that this is good. The right kind of church, and we have the right kind of church, can provide the adult support, the peer friendships, and a safe haven that they will need when they enter the dreaded high school years. I know the constancy of church was critical to my growing up. All kinds of craziness would go on during the school week, but come Sundays, I knew I'd be surrounded by the same loving people who'd known me and supported me from the beginning. Kids need that kind of certainty, and so do adults. That's why I'm so pleased to hear that Irene Kirschenbaum is returning to help an already outstanding RE team. To support this ever-growing congregation. Religious education and our church in general will definitely benefit from having her back. And now, if you're joining us online, please fill out a visitor form using the link in the service description. We'd love to connect with you. Some of us are bringing our best selves to this space, and some of us are bringing our struggling selves. All of us are welcome here, and all of us are loved. Thank you. Some of us already have open hearts, and some of us aren't quite there yet because our hearts have gotten a little beaten up this week, and we might have forgotten how to trust and to open. Your heart is welcome here, no matter how bruised. We welcome you among us. All of us are imperfect, but we're here to drop our defenses and trust what happens in worship and trust that it is powerful and life-giving. Together, we affirm that this day and our being together can make each of us braver, more compassionate, and wiser than we woke up this morning. We welcome you here. Now, I do have a couple announcements, of course, and they're good ones. I'm not sure how to respond to that. Well, at least they're good. I'm the one that tells the joke. You're the one that laughs. All right, here we go. Every year, now this is important for some of the teams and groups in our church. Every year, the Endowment Committee grants funds for projects supporting the mission of your UCB. The deadline for submitting these grant requests is March 15th, which isn't that far away. And any UUCB group, team, or committee can make such a request. Submit your idea by filling out an online application form, which you will find in the weekly mail. And my second announcement, if you were unable to participate in this in-person building expansion visioning event of 2 weeks ago, we're offering a virtual opportunity to participate. In the weekly messenger email and expansion news, there is a link to participate in a 1-hour Zoom call this coming Thursday evening at choir time at 7 p.m. to gather your ideas. And mark your calendars for the next big visioning event here on Saturday, March 8th. The Rodman Architecture team will summarize what we identified to them in the first visioning and show us early sketches of potential building designs and ask us to give them feedback. We hope everyone will attend. And now our chalice lighting, a little bit more formal. Our flaming chalice is the symbol of our Unitarian Universalist faith. It suggests perhaps that within our separate selves burns a flame of unity and connection and compassion. Once felt, that fire cannot be extinguished, and so we gather, weaving our lives together. And at this point, I'd like to invite Becky Martin up.
Good morning. My name is Becky Martin, and I'm a childhood arrival to Unitarian Universalism. My parents started attending UUCB when I was in elementary school. My son Fox is first generation UU, and we have grown our hearts with warmth, strength, courage along our faith journey. As a high schooler, I named my faith Navajunitarian Universalist. It's a lot. I combined my Jewish heritage from my mother's family, my Navajo beliefs from the 9th grade trip to Third Mesa, and my Unitarian Universalist experiences. Water spirits surrounded by Mother Earth and Father Sky, guiding spirits of the wind, whisper from deep within, spirit of life with many names, creating magic every day, rainbow stars and hearts that love, creating, laughter heard and tears that flow. I am grateful for these gifts. I am grateful to be loved. I share hope through my faith, a flaming spirit that connects, holds us gently within its web, reminding me every day it's our actions, hearts, and hands making earth the Holy Land. I wrote and shared this poem with our youth in the summer of 2017. That summer, adults were invited to share their passion with our youth. Each Sunday morning, mine was poetry. I believe poetry comes from your heart and not your brain. When I told my mom this, she suggested I write a new poem, and I actually took her advice. The poem I just read is titled, My Foundation. To find inspiration, I looked at notes titled, An Understanding of Something Important, written during a seminar at a church retreat led by Reverend Hal Lind. I drew two pictures. A podium my childhood minister, Forrest Whitman, stood in front of, and an open hand, the helping hand, I saw walking home from elementary school. I felt safe. And a list of words. Water Spirit is from a song I learned on the 9th grade trip. I sing it when I am afraid, and I have to face my fear. Flame of Life, how I define my spiritual core. Mother Earth, Father Sky, the spirit of the four directions, and the one God above all others, how I start my personal prayers. As I sat reading my poem, I realized how my belief system had transformed. Yet the core of my childhood beliefs continues to be part of my adult experience. For me, True North has not changed drastically. It has shifted based on my experiences and the people who have shared them with me. Today, I define myself simply: Unitarian Universalist. I light our chalice in honor of our faith journey, each of yours and mine. I am grateful for the community and the covenant we have with each other in the celebration of life each Sunday we spend together.
I found that very moving, and I'd like us to just sit with the poems for a moment just before I move on. We are not bound together by creed, a specific list of things we all believe in exactly the same way. We are united by shared values expressed in our 7 principles and by the commitments we make to each other about what creates community. To name that commitment, will you join together in person and online? Please rise, body or in spirit, and speak our covenant aloud as one. We gather in fellowship to speak truth to each other, to reach out and touch one another, to care with each other, and to seek the truth divine. So be it.
What do Unitarians believe? There are a lot of ways to answer the question, and for that matter, there are a lot of tones of voice in which to ask the question. What do Unitarians believe? What do Unitarians believe? You can imagine it, right? I like going back to old answers, though, sometimes. Every so often, you run into words from some preacher 2 centuries ago, and they sound like they were written yesterday. The very last thing we're going to sing in the whole service, the closing music, this is like a preview, this is like a trailer for it right now, is almost 200 years old. It's 170 years, something like that, and it still sounds fresh. I love that. Only partly because I am a gigantic history nerd also. But I like those old ways of answering the question that feel fresh. What do Unitarians believe? This is what Reverend Louis McGee said 72 years ago. Try it on, see if it fits. We believe in individual freedom of mind, heart, and conscience. We believe in the supreme value of the human person. We believe in the use of reason in religion. We believe in the welcome appreciation of difference of view in religion, as in other parts of life. We believe in the human capacity to solve individual and social problems and thus make progress. We believe in a continuing search for truth, and hence that life is an adventurous quest. We believe in scientific method as valid in ascertaining factual knowledge. We believe in the democratic process in human relations, in ethical conduct, in a dynamic universe, in the evolution of life, in the oneness of the human family, and the unity of life with the material universe. We believe in religion as an intellectual and emotional, a volitional response to the universe the universe of inanimate nature and the universe of life. We believe in the creative imagination as a power in promoting the good life. We believe in the creative power of love or goodwill in family and social relationships. We believe in things beautiful as well as things good and true. We believe that religion is as broad as life, and that the arts should have a proper place in our celebrations. And we believe in action. We believe in action that puts into daily practice these beliefs. Holding these beliefs, we affirm that our churches and fellowships are means, are necessary means, to give us support, to inspire, and to encourage us. In that spirit, can I invite you to rise and sing together?
Now more than ever, we need reminders that we are not alone, and it's in that spirit that I chose this morning's opening hymn, which is number 318 in your gray hymnal, if you'd care to follow along with the music.
Will you take a breath with me? I feel like this week needs more than that. Let's sigh, maybe just a big sigh together. Yes, we need like 45 more minutes of just that. Part of the work on a Sunday morning in singing in silence, part of the work over coffee, part of the work feeling the sunshine on your face, and in prayer and meditation is a sense of recharge or renewal. And that begins, that sense of celebration, that begins by facing the difficult reality of the moment that we're in right now. For each one of us, this week and this moment is difficult in different ways. Each one of us carries the the perfectly unique combination of sorrows and joys known only to you yourself. And in this space, in this moment, with the room that's made by a breath or a sigh, in this gathered community of broken hearts, there is strength and space enough to hold all of it. And I invite you then to call to mind, what are those things in your life this week, the tiny particulars just to you, and the larger movements in the community, in the nation, in the world? What are those things that drag you down, that keep you up at night, that fill you with worry for your future and the years to come? And just for a moment to call that to mind and hold those in silence altogether. And take a breath all together. We're not alone in that. And that's not the whole story. And our work, and some days it feels like work, is also to remember the joy and the beauty and the celebration that are just as real and just as much a part of life, that aren't weighed against or extinguished or overwhelmed or overcome, but are also true. And maybe that feels like work this morning, but we're here to do some work. So I'll invite you to call to mind, large or small, in the tiny details of your own life, or in the movements of this community or nation or world, what are the things that put a smile on your face, that make your step lighter, that ease your heart and your worry? And hold those as close as you can in your mind. And we'll take a breath all together. We are trying and practicing week after week to be a both and people who remember there are no simple stories that tell us everything we need to know, but that our heart is big enough, strong enough, connected enough to hold it all, the good, the bad, everything. This week, among the community, Diana Maiden invites us to keep in your thoughts all the federal workers who are at risk of job loss. And we think of our religious educator, Rachel Alba, as she joins her mom on the East Coast as her mom moves through surgery and recovery. Our hearts are with and caring for Neil McBurnett and his cousin Susan Hammonds on the death of her beloved husband. And our thoughts and prayers are with Daniel Martin through difficult days. For all the joys and the sorrows on our hearts, we hold this compassionate space with love, and we make those things visible, each to each other. So for those gathered here in person, I invite you in a moment as the music begins to come forward as you feel moved, starting with the back of the room, then the sides and the front, and silently to take a stone in symbol and emblem of everything on your heart, your joys and your cares both, and place it into the earth, held by something larger than any of us, a community connected and united by the weight of what each of us carry made visible to all. And please come forward as you feel moved.
am waking up to find my world between the dying and being reborn. I see what is and I see what could be. Can't close my eyes again and go back to sleep. Fill my days with blessed unrest and my nights with dreams of justice. Make me a vessel for the turning of the tide. How can I change our course? I'm just a lonely voice. Wish I could lose myself in all the noise. If we all could rise, a generation proud, then with a mighty song, we could turn this world around. So fill my days with blessed unrest and my nights with dreams of justice. Make me a vessel for the turning of the tide. Fill my days with blessed unrest and my nights with dreams of justice. Make me a vessel for the turning of the tide. Ancestors all behind and before me every child, I bring the power of a long unbroken line. Fill my days with blessed unrest and my nights with dreams of justice. Make me a vessel for the turning of the tide. Fill my days with blessed unrest and my nights with dreams of justice. Make me a vessel. Fill my days with blessed unrest and my nights with dreams of justice. Make me a vessel for the turning of the tide. Fill my days with blessed unrest and my nights with dreams of justice. Make me a vessel for the turning of the tide. Fill my days with blessed unrest and my nights with dreams of justice. Make me a vessel for the turning of the tide.
Here's a story where all of the facts are correct, and it doesn't tell the truth, but it's a good story. At the age of 50, having volunteered as an army chaplain in World War II, the Reverend Louis McGee lay awake on an army cot in Belgium, listening to the sound of bombers flying above him. And something shifted inside him in that moment, in that place. Something resolved itself. You know that feeling when something inside you shifts. You know where you're going or what you're going to do, even if you don't quite know how to get there. And it was this. After the war, he became a Unitarian minister. And as a black man, founded a black humanist congregation in Chicago. And then in time became the first black man called as the senior minister of a white church in our tradition. Every one of those facts is correct. That's accurate. There's nothing wrong in what I've said. But it doesn't really tell the true story. It's a simple story that I just gave you, where integration was inevitable, and with delight, we white folks made a home for black folks and championed and supported the guts and gumption of a driven man. Let's take that whole thing one more time. Let's tell the truth about it a little more. Louis McGee, a black man, the son of a former slave, had, by the time he enlisted as a chaplain, had for 20 years served in the African Methodist Episcopal Church, people he loved dearly, and a theology he did not believe in. Some of you all ended up as Unitarians for that same combination of reasons. McGee was a humanist. You heard his theology in the call to worship, the opening words. That's him describing his theology. He was a member of the governing board of the American Humanist Association while still serving an AME church. But when, in the years before World War II, he asked the American Unitarian Association about ordination as a Unitarian, I should say, as the Unitarian that he clearly was, their guidance, their response back to him was regretful and sympathetic and basically uninterested. They said if he wanted to be a Unitarian minister, well, he'd have to gather a congregation of black folks to be the minister of. As they told another black aspirant to ministry while denying him fellowship in the 40s, they wrote, "Look, we share the conviction that we ought to be doing more in the field of ministry to black people than we are now. We share also the conviction that an interracial church was something that ought to be established. We feel, however," they wrote, "we feel that since there is no opportunity for a black man to find a church among us, it's not right that we should fellowship him as a minister and then have no work for him to do." That's what racism looks like too. That's what white supremacy looks like. Not open race hatred, but the regretful, the almost wistful, apologetic declaration, "Gee whiz, we sure wish the world was different. And wouldn't it be nice if someone would change it? But, it's not our fault. The way things are is the way things are, and we all have to live in this world, so what are you going to do?" McGee, on a cot in Belgium with the sound of bombers flying overhead, resolved that he was going to make a way where there was no way. And after he returned home at the end of the war, he made big changes, says one biographer, understating it somewhat. He married Marcella Walker, the daughter of a well-to-do Chicago African-American family, and he entered Meadville Lombard Theological School in Chicago and began his studies for Unitarian ministry. And after graduation, the two of them together, Louis and Marcella, charted a new course. They were convinced that there was a hunger for liberal religion, for humanism, for Unitarianism, among black folks on Chicago's South Side. And they started the Free Religious Fellowship and gathered a congregation and grew it from nothing to 100 members. Mostly black folks, but some white folks, some Japanese. The Free Religious Fellowship was supported and encouraged, once it was launched and gaining traction, by other leaders in Chicago and nationally. After a few years, he moved on to a new challenge. He went to Flint, Michigan, a congregation looking for a minister, and impressed them preaching in 1957. But when the time came for them to vote him in, He didn't get 2/3 that was needed to be called. 2 years later, he became the assistant minister at First Unitarian Church of Los Angeles. And finally, in 1961, 40 years after he first explored and hoped for ministry, he became the minister of the Chico Unitarian Fellowship, the first black man called as the senior minister of a mostly white congregation in this denomination, 1961. So it's not that the first version of this story is wrong exactly, right? McGee, the hero, the champion, bravely opening new roads and breaking down barriers. He did that. But it doesn't really tell the truth of the whole story. The truth of it is a lot more complicated. Those mid-century Unitarians supporting and cheering him on into leadership are also the villains, setting the barriers and obstacles, and always obscuring their racism inside of reasonable, well-meaning, decent-sounding arguments. Our religious history when it comes to race is complicated. In 1785, one of the members of the very first Universalist church in America was a black man. A century later, 4 of the secret 6 who financed John Brown's raid on Harper's Ferry, 4 of the 6 of them were Unitarians. Unitarians were abolitionists, their houses were stops on the Underground Railroad, and we are deluding ourselves if we pretend that's the whole story. It was the Unitarian Senator John Calhoun who pushed through the Fugitive Slave Act, and it was the Unitarian President, Millard Fillmore, who signed it, writing, "God knows I detest slavery, but we must endure it and give it such protection as is guaranteed by the Constitution till we can get rid of it without destroying the last hope of free government in the world." This is one of the ways that racism works in this country. A social order that values white people more than people of color doesn't maintain that hierarchy just through open hatred. It maintains it by making good, sensible, reasonable arguments that let the people in power believe there is no other way it could be, that let them believe we're the good guys, surely. This is the shape of the racist backlash to diversity, equity, and inclusion. Listen, the anti-DEI crowd says. It's white people who have it hard right now. We're being made to feel bad and guilty about something outside of our control. We didn't do this. We didn't create this. Listen, they say. DEI secretly means that white folks are all racists, and our history, whatever it may have been, is punishing us now in the present. And since none of us are, of course, the villain, that version of history must not be true. Through that lens, the fact that a person of color holds a senior position is all the proof that you need that they're not entitled to it. For surely they must only have it because the scales were tipped in their favor. It's difficult to say all of this without just dripping in sarcasm, but this is the shape of the argument that's made. On Friday, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, with a 40-year military career, a fighter pilot, a 4-star general, was fired, and our defense secretary, writing of the chairman's promotion to general, asked, was it because of his skin color? He's a black man. Was it because of his skin color or his skill? We'll never know, but always doubt, which on its face seems unfair. But since he has made the race card one of his biggest calling cards, it doesn't really matter much. That is to say, the fact that a person of color holds a role of power is proof that they shouldn't hold it. Because being black means you're always playing the race card. A white person will always be at a disadvantage to them. This is the utterly upside down, absurd logic. But the point of walking through that is not just like to raise our collective blood pressure. I feel that in the room right now. The point of walking through that is to say that just like the Ministerial Fellowship Committee in the 1940s, systemic racism keeps control, keeps the status quo, keeps the hierarchy in place by hiding between and behind arguments that try to sound sensible. Logic and calm, rational analysis disguise white supremacy. And a country, a religious tradition, for that matter, a life, our individual lives, built on that sort of historical amnesia is built on sand. And our work is, first of all, to face the complexity of this in our country, our denomination, in our own lives, to face the fact that our people, our history, our ancestors were not all good or all bad. They were complicated. So are we. All of us can resist the simple stories that enable oppression. And all of us can also go along with them, too, and ignore the inconvenient parts of our own pasts or others. Any of us can get mired in a sinkhole of guilt or shame that keeps us looking in instead of paying attention to the world. What's the story, then? What's the story we're going to tell ourselves about who we are? My mother told me that when she was 12 years old, her grandfather told her the stories his father had told him of fighting in the Civil War. This was my great-great-grandfather, Henry Charles Stevens, who had a twin brother named Charles Henry Stevens. I don't know if their parents had a good sense of humor or a very short list of names. But Henry Charles and Charles Henry, they enlisted together on a Monday, April 22nd, 1861. They mustered into Pennsylvania's 35th Infantry, and they fought Bull Run, Antietam, Fredericksburg, Gettysburg. Henry Charles was part of the company that held Little Round Top. He survived 3 years of it and came home and got married. And the ring his wife wore then is what's on Terry's finger today. The past is not long ago. And I said that once to my mother, who's an avid historian, and she said, "Yeah, you feel that way because you're getting old." Which is also true. What I would like very much, on some level, is for what I just told you to be the whole story of my ancestors in the Civil War. I would like it to be that simple and that clear-cut. We were the good guys. Another branch of my mom's family was in South Carolina. James McMahon married Lucinda Taylor. James turned 17 years old in 1861. And while I don't have the primary source that shows it, I know what a 17-year-old white man in South Carolina did in 1861. He went to fight for the Confederacy. And more than that, his wife, Lucinda Taylor's family, gave their name to the town of Taylors, South Carolina. It's outside Greenville. Families who gave their names to towns in South Carolina in the 1800s were slave owners. My people were not just the good guys. The story is not that simple, and that is just like one little branch of the family tree. This sort of complexity, this is the story of our own families, it's the story of this religious tradition, it's the story of our country too. There's no unambiguous heroes and unambiguous villains. We're actual people, complicated, and our work is to engage with that and face that and then stay human in an inhumane world. To hold the complexity of all of those parts and then decide what to do with it. I sat down once with Louis McGee's granddaughter. Liz Harris was a member of the congregation I served back then. She was the treasurer. But I wanted to know about her grandfather that day. Liz was well into her 70s then. She had a sharper mind than I will ever have. She had an effortless elegance. She had run an art gallery for years, among so many other things. And we sat there in this old church building. She was wearing a back brace she hated, recovering from surgery. And she smiled, and her eyes softened. And she told me stories not about her grandfather's resume, but about his character. My grandfather, she said, my grandfather, Louis McGee, and my grandmother, they were the people every child needs in their life. People who will protect you and support you and love you. She said he was quiet and steady. He would laugh at the "a little dab will do you" commercials when he'd watch TV and drink his cocktail before dinner. He was of a generation of men who did not talk about their feelings. Liz said you could fish with him for hours, and about the most he would say was "pass the worms." But you knew he was with you and for you. She told me that as a 5th grader bullied by the other children, her grandfather told her, "You're fortunate, and you need to understand that you're fortunate. And that requires you to be responsible. The kids are jealous of you, jealous that you sit at the honors table, jealous of your family. They're not angry at you. They're angry at the way things are." And when I heard her say that, I wondered if the advice he gave her was the same advice he was living by. I wondered sometimes if that was the path he followed to stay human in an inhumane world. After all, he knew the complexity of what it really meant when Unitarians claimed with pride our president, Fillmore. He knew what it really meant when we celebrated, when we named churches after Thomas Jefferson. And perhaps he could have said, "I'm not angry at the people. I'm angry at the way things are. I'm angry at the way we don't even see what's right in front of us. I'm angry at the simple stories. Not naive, not resigned, not cynical, but facing the fullness of the world and doing the work he was called into." What do Unitarians believe? He said, we believe in the creative power of love or goodwill in family and social relationships. We believe in things beautiful as well as good and true. We believe in the supreme value of the human person. And maybe most of all, most importantly of all, we believe in action that puts into daily practice these beliefs. We don't think justice is inevitable. We don't think things are inevitably getting better. We're choosing to live in the world and work for that. We don't think that everyone automatically does the right thing and we're all good all the time. We're people choosing to put love at the center of our lives and then with a big sigh say, okay, well, what does that mean now for what we got to do with ourselves? Our call is not to be perfect, not to be the heroes of our stories, but to be human, not to be blameless and pure and correct and aggrieved, but to tell the whole truth, to go looking for the whole truth, to be hungry for the uncomfortable territory of what really happened in your life. Where did your people really come from and through and into? The truth that's not simple or one-sided or easy, In a world that wants you disengaged, overwhelmed, enraged, this is an act of integrity and of resistance to be a people who face and hold complexity. It's hard work and it's holy work. Amen.
In the face of this complexity, we are called to continue showing up, to continue doing the work, to continue saying yes to life. So if you'll rise in body or in spirit, we're going to join in singing hymn number 6 in your gray hymnal. Just as long as I have breath, I must answer yes to life. Though with pain I made my way, still with hope I meet each day. If they ask what I did well, tell them I said yes to life. Just as long as vision lasts, I must answer yes to truth. In my dream and in my dark, always that elusive spark. If they ask what I did well, tell them I said yes to truth. Just as long as my heart beats, I must answer yes to love. Disappointment pierced me through, still I kept on loving you. If they ask what I did best, tell them I said yes to love.
It's time for our offering, and I think, and it is, the QR code is up there. I do have a number of things to read, actually a rather lengthy thing, but it's very important, and it's work that's being led by Barbara Mulfazy back there, and Fred Cole, also hiding behind a pole. Would you guys position yourselves or something? So anyway, just bear with me here. This is good stuff. The Share Our Plate partner for the month of February is the Boulder Area Sanctuary and Immigration Coalition, which grew out of UUCB's Sanctuary Now, if some of you will remember that from a number of years ago. 200 volunteers from 6 Boulder County faith communities provided the support systems for Ingrid and her family during the 4 years they were living in sanctuary here in this church, as I said, for 4 years. Our current concern certainly remains with Ingrid and her family and the safety of her family. However, we are also involved with other immigrant families in both Boulder and Longmont. Barbara Mulfazy and Fred Cole are UUCB's representatives on the BASIC Executive Board. BASIC's mission is to provide support for immigrants and individuals regardless of status and within their larger immigrant communities. At times, this may include financial assistance. We also attempt to maintain an awareness of the issues affecting those individuals and their needs, and to communicate those concerns back to our respective congregations. BASIC is also connected with several other statewide organizations, such as Colorado Immigrant Rights Coalition, CRC, Casa de Paz, Colorado Rapid Response Network, and others. And we continue to assist those organizations with their humanitarian and advocacy work. The members, partners of our coalition continue to be highly appreciative of the support, energy, and resources which UUCB has contributed and wants to give you their greatest, sincerest thanks. It is true that only, quote, in community are we able to continue the work towards bringing justice and equity for our new neighbors as they seek better lives in the Boulder area. I invite you to give generously, as generously as you are able. And for those online, you can see the QR code. For those here, you can also see the QR code, or you can make a donation directly to the ushers. May your gifts be used to enact justice, bringing peace and love to the Boulder community. Thank you.
Oh, friends, we are not a Sunday morning church. I mean, we are a Sunday morning church. That is a true statement, but it's not the whole of the truth of it. That's why Dr. Emily sings for us, "Fill my days with blessed unrest and my nights with dreams of justice." That's part of our prayer too, to come, to be lifted up, to be refilled, refueled, recharged, to live in the whole real world with all its complexity, that our days are filled with blessed unrest and our nights with dreams of justice. Our hope, our prayer as we go out into the world is that, like sunshine, this is a religion that goes everywhere with us and sets us to work. Amen. Blessed be.
Will you rise in body or spirit and join in our closing song, Be Ours Our Religion? As Reverend David mentioned in the beginning of the service, these words are by the Reverend Theodore Parker, who lived from 1810 to 1860.